Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to be telling you 3 true scary stories about police officers. Police officers put their lives on the line every day to protect us, but sometimes they come face to face with something truly terrifying. These stories are all based on real events, and they're sure to chill you to the bone. So, if you're a fan of true crime or scary stories, then be sure to stick around for this one. You won't be disappointed. So let's get started. Story number 1. Robert had always been a dedicated and unflinching police officer in the bustling city of Los Angeles, California. He was known for his unwavering commitment to justice and the safety of his community. But beneath his steely exterior, he had a secret, a fear that gnawed at his soul, a fear of the dark, a fear of the unknown, and a fear that something sinister lurked in the shadows. Ever since he was a child, Robert had been haunted by the strange and eerie occurrences in his life. From unexplained whispers in the night to objects moving on their own, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched by something otherworldly. The memories of those ghostly encounters had never left him, and as he patrolled the streets of Los Angeles, he couldn't help but glance over his shoulder, fearing that something was lurking just out of sight. One fateful evening, Robert was assigned to the dreaded night shift, where the city's darkest secrets came to life. As he prepared to leave his modest home, he glanced at the photo of his wife and daughter, hoping to draw strength from their smiles. They were the reason he pushed through his fears and continued to serve as a police officer. With a heavy heart, he set out into the moonlit streets of the city, the weight of the unknown heavy on his shoulders. The streets were eerily quiet that night, with only a few souls wandering about. Robert patrolled diligently, his flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that tonight was different. As the hours passed, he received a call that sent shivers down his spine. A disturbance had been reported at an old, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of the city. As he approached the mansion, the sense of foreboding grew stronger. The mansion had been empty for years, a decaying relic of a bygone era. Its shattered windows and crumbling facade were a testament to the passage of time, and the chilling silence that surrounded it made Robert's skin crawl. He cautiously made his way through the overgrown garden, weeds rustling in the wind like ghostly whispers. The mansion's front door stood ajar, inviting him into the darkness within. Robert drew his gun and flashlight, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. He stepped inside, the creaking floorboards echoing through the desolate halls. The air was thick with the scent of decay and dampness, and the walls seemed to be closing in on him. As he ventured deeper into the mansion, he heard faint, eerie whispers that sent shivers down his spine. Shadows danced in the corners of his vision, and the temperature dropped drastically. It was as if the very essence of the mansion was trying to consume him. The walls seemed to be covered in old, faded photographs of people who had long since passed away, their eyes following his every move. The mansion was a labyrinth of nightmares, and Robert's heart pounded in his chest. He reached a grand ballroom, a room that had once been filled with laughter and dancing, now a cavern of despair. In the center of the room stood a grand piano, its keys dust-covered and desolate. But as Robert shone his flashlight on it, he gasped in horror as the keys began to play on their own, a haunting melody that sent shivers down his spine. He stumbled back, his flashlight flickering. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the mansion as if the very walls themselves were speaking to him. "Leave! Leave!" they seemed to chant. But Robert couldn't leave. He had a duty, a responsibility to investigate the disturbance, and so he pressed on. In the depths of the mansion, he discovered a hidden chamber, a place of unspeakable horrors. A collection of old, decrepit dolls lined the walls, their glassy eyes staring into the abyss. Robert's heart raced as he realized that each doll seemed to represent a missing person from the city. The truth was too horrifying to bear, and the walls seemed to close in on him. With a newfound determination, Robert set out to unravel the dark secrets of the mansion. He uncovered a sinister history of the place, where unspeakable acts had occurred within its walls. The restless spirits of the victims seemed to be reaching out to him, begging for justice. As he gathered evidence and called for backup, the mansion seemed to rebel against his presence. Shadows swirled around him, and the whispers became a deafening cacophony. He could feel an evil presence, ancient and malevolent, watching his every move. Just as he was about to make his exit, a chilling gust of wind blew out his flashlight, plunging him into utter darkness. Panicking, he fumbled for his phone, using its feeble light to guide him back to the exit. But the mansion fought back, its doors slamming shut, trapping him inside. In the pitch-black darkness, Robert's fear reached its zenith. He could feel a cold hand on his shoulder, a spectral grip that sent a surge of terror through his body. Whispers surrounded him, condemning him for intruding upon the mansion's secrets. In the final moments of his ordeal, Robert managed to escape the clutches of the mansion, but he was forever changed. He had come face to face with the supernatural, and it had left an indelible mark on his soul. Returning to the police station, he filed his report, but the details of that night were never made public. Robert couldn't bear to share the horrors he had witnessed, fearing that others would dismiss him as delusional. He continued his duty as a police officer, haunted by the memories of that fateful night, a night when he had ventured into the heart of darkness. And so, Robert patrolled the streets of Los Angeles, his fear of the dark and the unknown still haunting him. He knew that one day the horrors of that mansion would return to haunt him once more, and when they did, he would be ready to confront them. For Robert had learned that there are things in this world that defy explanation, and sometimes the greatest horrors are the ones that lurk in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. Story number 2. The night was thick with an eerie silence, as Officer James found himself parked at a remote spot on the outskirts of a desolate Florida town. It was well past midnight, and his radio crackled with occasional chatter from the station. The darkness was oppressive, only punctuated by the cold glow of the moon. James had been a cop for over a decade, but he had never experienced a night like this. James was a seasoned officer, known for his calm demeanor in the face of adversity. But tonight, a sense of unease clung to him. He had heard the stories from his colleagues, tales of this desolate stretch of road, a place where strange things happened after dark. Tonight, he was here to investigate a series of mysterious disappearances that had plagued the area. As he sat in his cruiser, the only source of comfort was the soft hum of the engine. He adjusted his hat and tightened his grip on the steering wheel, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He couldn't ignore the calls for help from the families who had lost their loved ones, and he was determined to get to the bottom of it. The night was oppressively dark, but the crunch of gravel under his tires resonated as he approached the abandoned, dilapidated house that had become the epicenter of the investigations. The house had been empty for years, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. James felt a chill run down his spine as he approached it. As he stepped out of his car, the night air was filled with a palpable tension. His flashlight cut through the inky blackness, revealing the overgrown, tangled mess of weeds and vines that surrounded the house. He cautiously moved closer, his hand hovering over his sidearm. The air felt thick, and the silence was deafening. The front door hung open, creaking eerily in the wind. James could hear his own heart pounding in his chest as he entered the abandoned structure. The interior was a decaying mess of broken furniture and peeling wallpaper. It was as though the house had been frozen in time, a relic of a bygone era. James moved through the rooms, each one seemingly colder than the last. He shone his flashlight into a hallway, revealing a set of stairs leading down to the basement. He descended cautiously, the air growing colder with every step. The basement was a place of nightmares, dimly lit, with ancient cobwebs and forgotten relics. The smell of decay hung in the air. As James continued to explore, his flashlight suddenly flickered and died, plunging him into total darkness. He fumbled for his backup flashlight, and when the beam of light returned, he realized he was no longer alone. A shadowy figure stood at the far end of the basement, its silhouette distorted and monstrous. Fear surged through him, but he raised his flashlight, revealing the grotesque figure. It was a woman, her hair matted and her clothes tattered. Her eyes were hollow, and she let out a blood-curdling scream before lunging at him with inhuman speed. James instinctively raised his sidearm and fired, the shots echoing through the basement, but the figure disappeared, leaving no trace. Panicked and disoriented, James fled the basement and stumbled out of the house. He knew he had to regroup and call for backup. As he reached for his radio, he was met with a disorienting static, and he realized that his only lifeline had been severed. He was truly alone, and the darkness that enveloped him seemed to have a malevolent presence of its own. Hours passed as James, shaken and terrified, desperately searched for a way out of the nightmarish situation. The eerie silence of the night had intensified, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The darkness seemed to close in around him, and every rustle of the wind felt like a whisper, carrying with it the echoes of his deepest fears. As the first light of dawn began to break on the horizon, James finally spotted the road and his cruiser. His heart raced as he ran towards it, hoping for salvation. But when he reached the car, what he saw inside was a scene of horror. The driver's seat was drenched in blood, and a message was scrawled on the windshield in crimson letters: "No escape." Terror overcame him, and he realized that he was trapped in a nightmare beyond his comprehension. His radio remained useless, and there was no way to call for help. With his car as his only means of escape compromised, he had no choice but to flee on foot. As James sprinted down the desolate road, he felt an icy hand close around his ankle. He stumbled and fell, only to turn and confront the source of his torment. The woman from the basement stood before him, her eyes now burning with malevolence. She whispered, "You should have left this place," before vanishing into thin air. James was left alone in the eerie silence once more. With the rising sun casting long, foreboding shadows, he knew he would never leave this place alive. The horrors that lurked in the darkness had claimed him as their own. His name would become another chilling tale to be whispered by those who dared venture into this haunted stretch of road in Florida, a place where the line between the living and the dead had blurred into an eternal nightmare. Story number 3. The night was draped in an eerie silence, the kind that crept into your bones and sent shivers down your spine. Charles, a seasoned police officer from the Houston Police Department, was on the late-night shift, patrolling the dimly lit streets of the city. He had seen his fair share of strange occurrences, but nothing could have prepared him for the chilling call he was about to receive. It was shortly past midnight when the call came in. Charles was sitting in his patrol car, sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee and listening to the crackling radio. The dispatcher's voice cut through the static. "Unit 12, please respond to a call from an unknown number. The caller reports a disturbance at 66 Elm Street. They sound frantic. Use caution." Startled, Charles put down his coffee and grabbed the radio. "Copy that, dispatch. I'm on my way. I'll need backup for this one." Within minutes, Charles was joined by Officer Ramirez and Officer Johnson, two trusted colleagues. They sped through the quiet streets, their sirens cutting through the stillness of the night. As they approached 66 Elm Street, an unsettling feeling settled over the group. The house was a decrepit, two-story building, its windows shattered and the front yard overgrown with weeds. Charles, Ramirez, and Johnson cautiously approached the front door, flashlights in hand. The caller had reported a possible break-in, but as they entered the house, it became evident that something far more sinister was at play. The air inside was heavy with a chilling presence, and a faint, haunting melody echoed through the dilapidated walls. The three officers explored the house room by room, but there was no sign of an intruder. The place was deserted, or so it seemed. As they ascended the creaking staircase to the second floor, The temperature dropped significantly, and their breaths formed frosty plumes in the air. The unsettling melody grew louder, and the officers followed its eerie tune to the master bedroom. In the dim light, Charles saw an old, dusty piano in the corner of the room, its keys moving as if played by unseen hands. The melody was melancholic, haunting, and it sent shivers down their spines. The officers were dumbfounded, unable to explain the inexplicable. Ramirez whispered, "This is giving me the creeps, Charles. I don't think we should be here." Before Charles could respond, they heard a faint whisper, a spectral voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It said, "Get out." The officers exchanged nervous glances, but Charles, known for his unwavering determination, said, "We can't leave without finding out what's going on here. Let's check the rest of the house." They continued their search, but as they explored further, they encountered more eerie phenomena. Objects moved on their own, and ghostly figures appeared in the corner of their eyes, vanishing when they tried to focus on them. The house seemed to be a portal to another realm, a place of restless spirits. As they reached the basement, the feeling of dread intensified. The room was filled with old, decaying books and strange symbols etched on the walls. It was a room of occult rituals, and it was clear that dark forces were at play. Charles knew they were in over their heads, but pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. Suddenly, the air grew frigid, and an apparition materialized before them. It was a woman in a tattered, blood-stained dress. Her eyes glowed with malevolence, and her voice echoed with anguish as she said, "Leave this place or suffer the consequences." The officers were frozen in terror, but Charles managed to utter, "We're with the police. We won't leave until we have answers." The malevolent spirit let out an ear-piercing scream, and the ground beneath them trembled. The very walls of the basement seemed to close in, trapping them. It was clear that they were dealing with forces beyond their comprehension. In a desperate bid to escape, Charles, Ramirez, and Johnson fought their way out of the basement, fleeing the haunted house. The paranormal activity intensified as they ran, and the apparitions pursued them, but they managed to reach their patrol car and speed away from 66 Elm Street back at the police station. They filed a report, but it was met with skepticism and disbelief from their colleagues. Charles knew that the truth of that night would remain a dark secret. Despite the horrors they had witnessed, they couldn't provide any concrete evidence of the supernatural occurrences. Charles, Ramirez, and Johnson would forever carry the memories of that night, haunted by the inexplicable events. As for 66 Elm Street, it remained a place shrouded in mystery, a house that would forever be avoided by the people of Houston. The chilling melody of the haunted piano continued to play, heard only by those who dared to venture close, a reminder of the paranormal forces that lurked within. Charles, haunted by that night, continued his duty as a police officer, always vigilant and always aware that the supernatural was just a heartbeat away from the ordinary. The memory of the malevolent spirit's warning still echoed in his mind, a chilling reminder that some mysteries were better left unsolved, some places better left unexplored, and some calls better left unanswered. Thanks for joining me on this chilling journey through 3 spine-tingling police officer horror stories. If you enjoyed these tales of the supernatural, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more horror stories content. Remember to hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. And as always, stay safe out there because you never know what horrors might be lurking in the darkness. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.